$3 billion. That was the estimated net worth, sitting at table 4, swirling a glass of vintage Pinot Noir, with a look of absolute boredom. He didn't just own the room. He owned the skyscraper the room was sitting in. Most people would kill for a seat at his table, but for the waitress standing 10 feet away, that table was a minefield. She didn't know that in exactly 2 minutes he would offer her a choice that would shatter her reality. "You have 10 seconds to impress me," he would say, eyes cold as ice. She didn't sing. She didn't dance. Instead, she said 5 words that cost him a fortune and saved his life. This is the story of how a spilled drop of water and a 10-second countdown toppled an empire. Rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of L'Obsidian Manhattan's most exclusive dining establishment. Located on the 91st floor, the restaurant offered a view of New York City that made the yellow taxis below look like crawling insects. Inside, the air smelled of white truffles, beeswax polish, and old money. Charlotte Evans adjusted the collar of her stiff white uniform. Her feet throbbed. She had been on a double shift for 14 hours, fueling herself on lukewarm tap water and the fear of missing her rent payment. At 24, Charlotte was supposed to be a junior analyst at a top-tier firm. She had the degree, the grades, and the mind for it. But she also had a sick mother in New Jersey and a mountain of medical debt that had crushed her dreams before they could even take a breath. So she wasn't analyzing market trends. She was analyzing how to carry 3 plates of searing hot foie gras without shaking. The maitre d', a man named Henri, who possessed the warmth of a reptile, snapped his fingers at her. "Table 4, Henri hissed, shoving a heavy leather-bound wine list into her chest. "Mr. Calloway is asking for the reserve list. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not make eye contact for longer than strictly necessary. And for the love of God." "Charlotte, fix your hair. You look like you just ran a marathon." Charlotte took the list, her knuckles white. "Yes, Henri." Adrian Calloway. The name was synonymous with ruthless efficiency. At 32, he was the youngest titan on Wall Street, the CEO of Vertex Capital. Magazines called him a visionary. His competitors called him the silencer, because when he bought a company, the original board usually went quiet permanently. He was known for 2 things, an IQ that bordered on terrifying and a patience threshold of 0. Charlotte approached table 4. Calloway sat alone. This was unusual. Men like him usually had an entourage, lawyers, sycophants, or a model hanging off their arm to distract from their lack of personality. But Calloway was solitary. He wore a charcoal suit that likely cost more than Charlotte's entire education. His dark hair was swept back, and his eyes were fixed on a tablet propped up against a crystal water glass. He didn't look up as she approached. "The reserve list, sir," Charlotte said, her voice steady, despite the tremor in her hands. She placed the leather book on the pristine white tablecloth, aligning it perfectly with the edge of the table. Calloway ignored her. He was typing furiously on his phone with one hand, while scrolling through a complex dataset on the tablet with the other. Charlotte stood there. The protocol at L'Obsidian was strict. You do not leave until the guest dismisses you or orders. So she became a statue. She watched him work. Most waitstaff zoned out, thinking about their tips or their aching backs. But Charlotte couldn't help herself. She looked at the screen. It was a merger document. Detailed analytics of a biotech firm called Waitress. He was looking at their projected Q4 earnings. Charlotte's eyes narrowed slightly. She knew Waitress, not because she was an insider, but because she spent her sleepless nights reading financial forums and analyzing public ledgers to keep her brain from rotting in the service industry. Etheris was the darling of the tech world right now, hyped up to be the next medical revolution. Calloway let out a sigh of frustration, tossing his phone onto the table. It slid across the linen and stopped inches from the edge. "Garçon," he said, not looking at her. "Bring me the 82 Latour and take this away." He gestured vaguely at the untouched appetizer, a $20 scallop that had gone cold. "It will need time to breathe, sir," Charlotte said softly. The Latour. Finally he looked up. His eyes were a startling shade of grey, devoid of any warmth. He looked at her not as a human being, but as a malfunctioning appliance that had just made a noise. "I didn't ask for a commentary on the wine," Calloway said, his voice low and smooth, like velvet over gravel. "I asked you to bring it." "Of course," Charlotte said, bowing her head. "Right away." She turned to leave, but as she pivoted, the heel of her worn-out shoe caught on the thick plush carpet. It was a clumsy, exhausted mistake. She stumbled. She didn't fall, but her hand instinctually shot out to steady herself, landing on the edge of the table. The vibration sent the heavy crystal water glass tipping. It happened in slow motion. The glass fell. Ice water cascaded across the table, soaking the white linen, splashing onto the leather wine list, and most horizontally pooling dangerously close to his tablet and phone. The silence that followed was louder than a gunshot. Henry was already sprinting across the dining room, his face a mask of horror. But Charlotte was frozen. She watched a single droplet of water roll down the screen of the tablet, distorting the graph of Etheris stock. Calloway didn't yell. He didn't jump up. He simply picked up a linen napkin and dabbed a drop of water off his cufflink. Then he looked at Charlotte. "You," he said. "I am so sorry, sir." Charlotte stammered, grabbing a towel from her apron. I tripped. Let me—" "Stop," he commanded. He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. The entire restaurant had gone quiet. Other diners were watching. Henri had stopped a few feet away, looking ready to fire her on the spot and drag her out by her ear. Calloway looked at his watch, a Patek Philippe. He tapped the glass face. "You interrupted my focus," Calloway said. "You nearly destroyed $50,000 worth of electronics, and you are wasting my time." "Sir, Time is the only currency I care about," Calloway interrupted, his voice raising just an octave enough to command the room. "I was in the middle of a decision that involves 9 figures. Now I am looking at a wet tablecloth and a clumsy waitress." He stood up. He was tall, imposing, radiating a dangerous energy. "You want to keep your job?" Calloway asked. "You want to walk out of here without my personal security escorting you to the curb?" Charlotte swallowed hard. She needed this job. Her mother's dialysis treatment was next week. "Yes, sir. Please." Calloway smirked. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator playing with food. "Fine," he said. "I'm bored. The wine list is boring. The food is boring. And this deal," he gestured to the tablet, "is becoming tedious. So let's play a game." He held up his hand fingers splayed. "You have 10 seconds. Charlotte blinked. "Sir, you have 10 seconds to impress me," Calloway said. "Do something. Say something. Prove to me that you are not just a waste of space taking up oxygen in my city. If you bore me, you're fired. If you impress me, well, let's see." He looked at his watch again. 10. He counted. Panic is a strange chemical. It can paralyze a deer in headlights, or it can make a mother lift a car off her child. For Charlotte, Evan's panic usually meant shutting down. But tonight, combined with exhaustion and the sheer arrogance of the man standing in front of her, panic turned into something else. It turned into anger. 9. Calloway counted his eyes locked on hers. He expected her to juggle, or tell a joke, or beg. That's what people usually did when Adrian Calloway exerted his power. They begged. 8. Charlotte looked at the tablet. The screen was still on. The graph of Etheris was glowing blue. She saw the projected growth curve. It was a hockey stick straight up. It looked perfect. It looked like $1 billion waiting to be made. 7. But Charlotte saw something else. She remembered the article she had read 3 nights ago on a deep web forum for forensic accountants. A small thread barely noticed about supply chain irregularities in Southeast Asia. 6. She looked at Calloway. He looked so smug, so sure that he was the smartest person in the room. 5. "Don't buy Etheris," Charlotte said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the air. Calloway stopped counting. His hand hovered in the air. 4. "What did you say, sir?" "I said, don't buy Etheris." Charlotte repeated, her voice gaining strength. "It's a trap." Henri, the manager, stepped forward, his face purple. "Miss Evans, get to the kitchen immediately. Mr. Calloway, I am deeply sore." "Quiet." Calloway snapped at Henri, not looking away from Charlotte. He lowered his hand. The game had changed. "You have 3 seconds left. Explain, or I destroy you." Charlotte stepped closer to the table, ignoring the water she had spilled. She pointed a shaking finger at the tablet. "You're looking at their Q4 projections based on their new FDA approval," she said, speaking fast. "But their primary solvent supplier in Malaysia just filed for bankruptcy protection under a shell company name yesterday. It hasn't hit the Western news wires yet. Etheris can't manufacture their flagship drug without that solvent. Their supply chain is broken. The stock isn't going to skyrocket, Mr. Calloway. It's going to zero in less than 48 hours. Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. Calloway stared at her. For the first time, the boredom was gone. His eyes narrowed, scanning her face, looking for a lie, a trick, a prank. "A shell company?" he asked, his voice deadly quiet. "Which one?" Charlotte's mind raced back to the 3 a.m. reading session. "Trident Logistics. They operate out of Kuala Lumpur. They mask the debt through a holding firm in the Caymans. If you sign that deal tonight, you're buying a corpse." Calloway didn't blink. He reached down, picked up his phone, and dialed a number. He put it to his ear. "Get me Reynolds," he said into the phone, his eyes never leaving Charlotte. "Now. I don't care what time it is." A pause. "Reynolds, check a Malaysian firm called Trident Logistics. Cross-reference it with Etheris supply chain. Do it now. I'll hold." The restaurant watched in rapt attention. Charlotte felt like she was going to vomit. If she was wrong, if that forum post was just a conspiracy theory, she wasn't just fired. She was blacklisted. 1 minute passed. Calloway stood like a statue. Charlotte clasped her hands behind her back to stop them from shaking. Then Calloway's expression changed. His eyebrows shot up a fraction of an inch. "You're sure?" he said into the phone. "Send me the file." He hung up. He looked at the tablet, then swiped the entire Etheris deal off the screen, closing the window. He placed the phone down gently. He looked at Charlotte. Really looked at her. He saw the frayed collar, the tired eyes, the cheap shoes. "What is your name?" he asked. "Charlotte," she whispered. "Charlotte Evan." "Well, Charlotte Evans," Calloway said, reaching into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a black business card made of metal. He placed it on the wet tablecloth. "You just saved me $400 million. He picked up his wine glass, the empty one, and held it up in a mock toast. "You're fired," he said. Charlotte felt the floor drop out from under her. "What?" "You're fired from this restaurant," Calloway clarified. "Henri, bring her her coat." "But," Charlotte started, tears pricking her eyes. "Be at this address tomorrow morning at 6 a.m., Calloway said, tapping the metal card. "Don't be late, and wear something that doesn't smell like scallop grease. You work for me now." He sat back down and returned to his phone. "You have 10 seconds to get out of my sight." The address on the card led to the Vertex Tower in the financial district. It was a monolith of glass and steel that seemed to pierce the clouds. Charlotte arrived at 5:45 a.m. She had spent the last of her savings on a simple navy blue blazer and a pair of trousers that fit better than her waiter's uniform. She had barely slept. Her mother had coughed through the night, and Charlotte had sat by her bed, wondering if she had hallucinated the entire interaction at the restaurant. But the metal card in her pocket was heavy and real. The lobby of Vertex Capital was intimidating. Security guards with earpieces scanned her ID and checked her bag. When she showed the metal card, their demeanor shifted instantly from suspicion to deference. "Elevator 4 to the penthouse level," the guard said. "Mr. Calloway is expecting you." The elevator ride made her ears pop. When the doors opened, she stepped into a chaotic hum of activity. It was not a typical office. It was a war room. Dozens of people in sharp suits were rushing around, shouting into headsets, pointing at massive LED screens that covered the walls. The ticker tape of the stock market scrolled endlessly in red and green. "You must be the waitress." Charlotte turned. A woman with severe red hair and glasses that looked like they could cut glass stood there holding a clipboard. She looked Charlotte up and down with a sneer. "I'm Charlotte. I'm Victoria, Mr. Calloway's executive assistant. Follow me. Try to keep up." Victoria walked at a pace that forced Charlotte to jog. "He's in a mood today. The Etheris news broke this morning. Stock tanked 60%. Everyone thinks he's a psychic for pulling out last night. He's not a psychic. He's a predator. Don't forget that." They reached a massive set of double oak doors. Victoria didn't knock. She pushed them open. Adrian Calloway was standing by the window looking out at the Statue of Liberty. He was on a call. "I don't care, bury them," he said. "If they want to play hardball, buy their debt and call it in. Goodbye." He hung up and turned. He looked fresh, energized, unlike the bored man in the restaurant. "Coffee," he said. Charlotte blinked. "Excuse me. Coffee," Calloway repeated, pointing to a machine in the corner. "Black, 2 cubes of sugar, and sit down." Charlotte felt a flash of irritation. Was this it? Was she just a glorified waitress with a better view? She made the coffee. She placed it on his desk. She sat. Calloway sat opposite her. He stared at her for a long time. "I ran a background check on you last night, Charlotte," he said. Charlotte froze. "Is that legal?" "I have enough money to make gravity illegal if I wanted to," he replied dismissively. "University of Pennsylvania, 3.9 GPA in finance. Dropped out 2 years ago. Father deceased. Mother chronic autoimmune condition. Debt $140,000. Charlotte felt naked. A mass lock on the accounts she had identified. Now we cut the head off the snake. Suddenly the office door burst open. It wasn't security. Standing in the doorway was a man Charlotte recognized from the company website, photos on the wall. He was older, silver-haired, wearing a tuxedo as if he had just come from a gala. It was Arthur Pendleton, the chairman of the board. And he wasn't alone. Behind him were two men who definitely did not work for Vertex Security. They wore ill-fitting suits and had the dead eyes of hired muscle. "Adrian," Arthur said, his voice booming and jovial, though his eyes were cold. "Working late security says you triggered a lockdown. A glitch, I assume." Adrian didn't look up from his screen. "No glitch, Arthur. Just taking out the trash." Arthur's eyes flickered to Charlotte. "And who is this?" Arthur asked, stepping into the room. The two men behind him closed the doors and stood in front of them. "New secretary. She's the person who just traced your Delaware accounts," Adrian said calmly. He finally looked up. "It's over, Arthur. The transfers are frozen. The SEC has already been pinged with an automated alert. It went out 10 seconds ago." Arthur stopped moving. The jovial mask dropped. His face twisted into a snarl of pure malice. "You arrogant boy," Arthur spat. "You think you can torch the board we made you?" "I made myself," Adrian corrected. "You just leached off the profits." Arthur signaled to the two men. "Get the drive. Destroy the computer. And throw the girl out the window. Make it look like a suicide." Charlotte's blood ran cold. This wasn't corporate espionage anymore. Adrian stood up. He didn't look scared. He looked bored. "Arthur." Adrian sighed, adjusting his cufflinks. "Did you really think I would trigger a lockdown without having my own team in the hallway?" Arthur frowned. "What?" Adrian held up 3 fingers. 3. 2. 1. The glass panels of the office shattered inward, not the window but the wall connecting to the hallway. 3 figures in tactical gear rappelled through the ceiling vents and the side doors simultaneously. It was chaos. A flashbang grenade went off. Charlotte screamed and ducked behind the sofa. "Get down!" Adrian's voice roared. He wasn't behind the desk anymore. He was vaulting over it, tackling Charlotte to the ground, shielding her body with his own, as the room erupted into a blur of shouting and struggle. The boardroom of Vertex Capital was quiet, but it was a different kind of silence than the one Charlotte had experienced on her first day. That had been the silence of exclusion. This was the silence of deference. 6 months had passed since the night the glass wall shattered. Arthur Pendleton was awaiting trial for embezzlement and conspiracy to commit murder. The clean-up had been swift and brutal. Adrian Calloway didn't just fire the conspirators. He dismantled their careers, their reputations, and their futures. And Charlotte. Charlotte Evans sat at the right hand of the head of the table. She wore a cream-colored suit tailored in Milan. Her hair was styled in a sharp, professional bob. The cheap shoes were gone, replaced by red-soled heels that cost more than her mother's car. "Projected earnings for Q3 are up 14%, Charlotte said, her voice crisp. She didn't use notes. She didn't need them. The acquisition of Kinetics, specifically the defense sector spin-off, has outperformed all metrics. Around the table, 12 men and women nodded. Preston Cole was there, sitting 4 seats down. He didn't look at her. He took notes, furiously terrified to miss a word. He wasn't the golden boy anymore. He was lucky to still be employed, a mercy granted only because Charlotte had told Adrian that firing him would be too easy. Keeping him around Forcing him to report to her, that was a better punishment. "Good," Adrian said from the head of the table. He looked tired but sharp. He caught Charlotte's eye. A micro-expression passed between them. Acknowledgement, partnership, maybe something more. The meeting adjourned. The executives filed out, murmuring their praises. "Charlotte, a moment," Adrian said. She stayed seated as the room emptied. When the doors clicked shut, Adrian spun his chair to face the window. "Your mother called the front desk again," he said. Charlotte stiffened. "I told security to block her number." "She's persistent," Adrian said. "She says she hasn't seen you in 3 weeks. She says the nurses at the new facility, the one I'm paying for, are treating her like a queen, but she misses her daughter." "I'm busy," Charlotte said, shuffling her papers. "We have the Tokyo merger at 4 a.m. "Charlotte." Adrian's voice was gentle. It was a tone he used only with her. "You're becoming me," he said. Charlotte looked up, a flash of defensiveness in her eyes. "Isn't that the point? Isn't that what you trained me for? To be a killer, to see the things that aren't there." "I trained you to be sharp," Adrian said, standing up and walking over to her. He leaned against the table, crossing his arms. "I didn't train you to be hollow." He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His touch was electric, familiar. Over the last 6 months, they had spent 18 hours a day together. They had fought wars in boardrooms, celebrated victories with takeout Chinese food at 2 a.m., and shared the unique intimacy of 2 people who knew where all the bodies were buried. "Go see her," Adrian said. "Take the evening off. Take the driver." "I can't," Charlotte said, standing up abruptly. "The Tokyo deal. I can handle Tokyo," Adrian said. "Go, that's an order." Charlotte hesitated. She looked at this man who had saved her life, and whom she had saved in return. She realized with a sudden pang of fear that she was in love with him. And she was terrified that if she left the building, if she stepped out of this golden cage of power and adrenaline, she would remember who she used to be, and she wouldn't be able to come back. "Fine," she said, "but I'll be back by midnight." Adrian smiled. It was a real smile. "I'll be waiting." Charlotte took the elevator down. Her driver, a massive ex-Marine named Silas, opened the door of the black Maybach. "The care facility in Jersey, Miss Evans." "Yes, Silas." The car purred into traffic. Charlotte watched the city roll by. She felt disconnected from the people on the sidewalk. The tourists, the workers, the waitresses. They looked like ants. Is this what it feels like to be a god, she wondered? Or is this what it feels like to be dead? Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She usually ignored them, but something made her answer. "This is Charlotte." "Hello, Charlotte." The voice was distorted, synthesized, but the cadence was familiar. "Who is this?" "Someone who knows about the USB drive," the voice said. "The one you gave to Adrian Calloway 6 months ago." Charlotte's blood ran cold. "That's closed business. Pendleton is in jail." "Pendleton was a puppet," the voice rasped. "You cut off the head of the snake, Charlotte, but you didn't check for the venom. You missed something in the files. File 50. Charlotte frowned. There were only 49 files in the garbage pile. "Check again," the voice said, "and ask Adrian why he never let you see the archived server from that night. Ask him why the $400,000 monthly payments from Blue Ridge didn't stop when Pendleton was arrested. They just changed accounts." "You're lying," Charlotte snapped. "Am I?" "Check the ledger." "Charlotte, check the account VTX-EXEC-1. Ask your savior whose name is on the Cyprus holding firm now." The line went dead. Charlotte sat in the plush leather seat, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. File 50. Exec 1. Adrian. "Turn around," Charlotte said. Miss Silas asked, meeting her eyes in the rearview mirror. "Turn the car around, Silas. Now go back to the tower." The tower was dark when she returned. It was 9:00 p.m. Charlotte didn't go to her office. She went to the server room on the 40th floor. She used her executive override to enter. She sat at a terminal, her hands shaking. She accessed the deep archive. She searched for the transaction logs from Blue Ridge Logistics. The voice was right. The payments hadn't stopped. They had continued every month for the last 6 months. Destination Account 5. TX-Exec-1. Charlotte felt like she had been punched in the gut. Exec 1 was Adrian. He hadn't stopped the theft. He had absorbed it. He had used her to take out Pendleton, not because Pendleton was stealing, but because Pendleton was stealing too much. Adrian had simply consolidated the power. "No," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "No, no, no." She pulled up the incorporation documents for the Cypress Shell Company. Owner of record Adrian J. Calloway. Beneficiary blank. She needed to see him. She needed to hear him deny it. She took the elevator to the penthouse. Adrian was there exactly where she left him. He was on the phone, looking out at the city. He turned when she entered, a smile forming on his lips, a smile that died when he saw her face. "Charlotte," he said, lowering the phone. "You're back early. Is your mother okay?" "File 50, Charlotte said. Her voice was a broken whisper. Adrian went very still. "Who told you about that?" "It doesn't matter." Charlotte walked toward him, fury replacing her heartbreak. "You used me. You made me believe we were the good guys. You made me believe you were different." "I am different," Adrian said, his face hardening. "I'm smarter." "You're stealing," Charlotte screamed. "Just like them." "I am funding a war," Adrian shouted back, his voice echoing off the glass. "Do you think Vertex runs on good intentions? Do you know what it costs to keep the wolves at bay, to pay the politicians, to keep the regulators blind? That money, that slush fund, keeps this entire company alive. It keeps you employed. It pays for your mother's treatments." "I don't want your dirty money," Charlotte spat. "I trusted you." "Grow up, Charlotte," Adrian snapped. He walked over to his desk and picked up a tablet. "There are no good guys in this building. There are only winners and losers. I made you a winner. Don't throw it away because of some misplaced morality you picked up waiting tables." Charlotte stared at him. The man she loved was gone. Or maybe he had never existed. Maybe she had just fallen in love with a reflection in the glass. "I quit," she said. She turned to leave. "Charlotte," Adrian said. His voice was low, dangerous. "You know too much. You can't just walk out." She stopped at the door. She didn't turn around. "Watch me." "I can destroy you," Adrian warned. "I can cancel your mother's care. I can freeze your assets. I can make sure you never work again. You have 10 seconds to change your mind." The countdown, just like the first night. Charlotte turned around. She looked him in the eye. 10, she said. Adrian blinked. 9, Charlotte counted, stepping closer. 8. She reached into her pocket. She pulled out the metal business card he had given her that first night. 7. She threw it on the floor. It clattered loudly. 6. I don't need your money, Adrian. 5. I have something better. 4. I have the evidence. 3. She held up her phone. The screen was glowing. Upload complete, sent to SECFBI and NY Times. Adrian's face went white. He lunged for her. 2. Charlotte stepped back into the hallway. 1. She slammed the heavy oak doors shut. The sound of the lock clicking into place was the most satisfying sound she had ever heard. 1 year later. The rain lashed against the windows of L'Obsidian. The restaurant was busy. The air smelled of truffles and old money. A man sat at table 4. He was new money, loud, obnoxious. He was snapping his fingers at a waitress. "Hey, sweetheart, my water glass is empty." The waitress hurried over. She was young, maybe 22. She looked exhausted. Her uniform was slightly too big. "I'm sorry, sir," she said. "I'll get that right away." She reached for the pitcher, but her hand slipped. Water splashed onto the table, soaking the man's expensive cuff. "You idiot!" the man roared, standing up. "Do you know how much this suit cost, manager?" "Get the manager." The girl froze, terrified. Tears welled in her eyes. "Sir, please," she stammered. "I need this job." "You're fired," the man yelled. "Get out of my sight." "Excuse me." The voice came from the table next to them. A woman stood up. She was wearing a simple but elegant black dress. She had an air of quiet power about her. She walked over to table 4. She looked at the angry man. "Sit down," she said. The man blinked. "Who are you?" "I'm the owner," Charlotte Evans said. She looked at the trembling waitress. She smiled. It was a warm, genuine smile. "It's okay," Charlotte said to the girl. "Accidents happen." She turned back to the man. "Sir, you have 10 seconds to apologize to my staff," Charlotte said calmly. "Or you can leave my building." The man sputtered. "You can't do, you know who I am." "No," Charlotte said, "and I don't care. 10. This is ridiculous. 9. I'm leaving Guo. 8. The man stormed out, cursing. The restaurant fell silent. Charlotte turned to the girl. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a clean, dry napkin. She handed it to her. "What's your name?" Charlotte asked. "Sarah," the girl whispered. "Well, Sarah," Charlotte said, "go take a break. Get some coffee. You're doing a great job." Charlotte walked back to her table. She sat down and picked up her glass of wine. She looked out at the city lights, the same city that had once tried to crush her. She took a sip. She wasn't a billionaire. She wasn't a master of the universe. She was just Charlotte. And for the first time in her life, she was free. What an ending. From a nervous waitress to a CEO, and finally to a woman who chose integrity over power. Charlotte. Proved that your worth isn't determined by your bank account, but by what you're willing to sacrifice for the truth. If you enjoyed this roller coaster of a story, smash that like button. Right now it really helps the channel. What would you have done in Charlotte's shoes? Would you have taken the money and stayed with Adrian? Or did she make the right choice? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.